The stars looked different from the observation deck of the UHS Liberty. Lisa Carter pressed her palm against the cold window and watched Omega Point grow larger as their ship approached the massive space station. Her reflection stared back at her, blonde hair pulled into a neat bun, blue eyes that held too much hope for what lay ahead. "You're nervous," Jake Morrison said behind her. Lisa didn't need to turn around to know her older brother was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with those sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "I'm excited," she corrected, though her voice betrayed the flutter in her stomach. "This could change everything, Jake. Real peace between humans and the Coalition." Jake stepped closer, his military boots silent on the metal floor. Even in civilian clothes, he moved like the Special Forces operative he was. "Lisa, these aliens have been pushing us around for months, demanding we give up our colonies, limit our fleet size. You really think they want peace?" Lisa turned to face him. At 28, she was 4 years younger than Jake, but she had spent those years studying alien cultures, learning their languages, understanding their customs. She believed in diplomacy the way Jake believed in tactical superiority. "The Vorthax might be aggressive, but not all Coalition species are like that," she said. "The crystalline entities, the Hive Queens, they're reasonable. They just need to understand that humans aren't a threat." Jake's jaw tightened. "We're not a threat because we choose not to be. There's a difference." Before Lisa could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. "All diplomatic personnel, please report to Briefing Room 3. Arrival at Omega Point in 2 hours." Lisa gathered her data tablets and headed for the door. Jake followed, his presence both comforting and worrying. She had specifically requested him as head of security for this mission, but she knew Jake saw enemies everywhere. It came from too many years in the military, too many battles against pirates and raiders in the outer systems. The briefing room buzzed with activity. Admiral Kate Brooks stood at the front, her gray hair pulled back severely, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. She was a legend in the human fleet, the woman who had held the line at Kepler Station when raiders tried to break through human defenses. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Brooks began, "in 2 hours we dock at Omega Point for the most important negotiations in human history. The Coalition has made their demands clear. They want us to surrender 70% of our outer colonies and submit all military decisions to their Oversight Council." Murmurs filled the room. Lisa felt her stomach drop. Those terms were even worse than what she had been told during preparation. "Our job," the Admiral continued, "is to find a middle ground. Dr. Carter will lead our diplomatic team. Commander Morrison will handle security." Her eyes found Jake in the crowd. "I don't need to remind anyone how important this is. If negotiations fail, we could be looking at war with 7 alien species." After the briefing, Lisa returned to her quarters to review her notes one final time. She had memorized the cultural preferences of each Coalition species. The Vorthax valued strength and directness. The crystalline shard entities appreciated logical arguments. The insectoid Hive Queens responded to collective benefit rather than individual gain. She believed she could make them understand. Humans weren't the aggressive, territorial species the Coalition seemed to think they were. Sure, they had fought wars among themselves in the past, but they had grown beyond that. They had built a peaceful interstellar community based on cooperation and mutual respect. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Jake entered without waiting for permission, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her a cup. "Thanks." Lisa took a sip and made a face. Military coffee was terrible, but it was familiar. "Jake, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't antagonize them. I know you think they're all potential enemies, but if we're going to make this work, we need to show them we're not aggressive." Jake sat down across from her. "Lisa, I've read their communications intercepts. They're not negotiating in good faith." "What do you mean?" "I mean they've already decided what they want from us. This whole negotiation is just for show." Jake leaned forward. "Promise me something too. If things go wrong, if they try to hurt you or any of our people, don't expect me to stand there and watch." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Nothing's going to go wrong. We're going to find a solution that works for everyone." 2 hours later, the UHS Liberty docked at Omega Point. The space station was enormous, a gleaming structure of metal and crystal that housed diplomatic missions from across the galaxy. As Lisa stepped off the transport shuttle, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The coalition representatives were already waiting in the main conference room. Lisa had seen pictures of them, but meeting them in person was different. Commander Zexthul of the Vorthak Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, his reptilian features sharp and predatory. His scales were a deep green that reminded Lisa of old Earth crocodiles. The Hive Queen Veltra clicked softly as Lisa entered, her insectoid body graceful despite its alien nature. The crystalline entity called Shard Prime reflected the room's lights in beautiful, prismatic patterns. Dr. Carter, Ambassador Cretan, the coalition's chief negotiator, gestured to a chair at the conference table. He was the most human-looking of the group, though his pale blue skin and black eyes marked him as clearly alien. "We welcome you to these important discussions." Lisa took her seat, very aware of Jake standing behind her, his hand resting casually near his sidearm. The other human diplomats filled the remaining chairs, but Lisa could feel all eyes on her. She was the lead negotiator. Success or failure rested on her shoulders. "Thank you, Ambassador Cretan," Lisa began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "The human government is committed to finding a peaceful solution that benefits all our species. We believe there's room for compromise that addresses your concerns while preserving human sovereignty." Zexthul's laugh was like gravel in a blender. "Compromise? Little mammal, you seem to misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation between equals. Your species is young, violent, and dangerous. The coalition has decided to limit your expansion for the good of galactic peace." Lisa felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her voice level. "Commander, I think there might be some misconceptions about human nature that we can address through dialogue." "There are no misconceptions." Shard Prime's voice chimed like broken glass. "Your species has a documented history of warfare, genocide, and environmental destruction. The evidence speaks for itself." As the first day of negotiations continued, Lisa felt her optimism slowly drain away. Every proposal she made was dismissed. Every compromise she suggested was rejected. The coalition representatives treated her not as an equal, but as a child being scolded for misbehavior. By evening, as the sessions ended for the day, Lisa was exhausted. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and it felt like the coalition had already made up their minds before she even spoke. Jake was waiting for her outside the conference room. He didn't say anything, just walked beside her back to their quarters. But Lisa could see the anger in his eyes, the way his hands clenched into fists when he thought she wasn't looking. That night, as Lisa reviewed her notes and prepared for the next day's sessions, she clung to hope. Tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow she would find the right words, the right arguments, the right approach to make them listen. She had to believe that, because the alternative was too terrible to consider. The second day of negotiations began before dawn. Lisa had barely slept, spending most of the night revising her presentation. She had prepared new data showing human contributions to galactic science, examples of peaceful human settlements, and proposals for gradual integration that might address the coalition's concerns. Jake brought her breakfast, but she was too nervous to eat much. "You look tired," he said, sitting across from her in the small dining area of their quarters. "I'm fine," Lisa replied, though dark circles under her eyes told a different story. "Today will be better. I've prepared responses to all their objections from yesterday." Jake didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "Just remember what I said. If they try anything, they won't," Lisa interrupted. "This is diplomacy, Jake. They might be difficult, but they're not monsters." An hour later, Lisa stood at the front of the conference room, facing the same alien delegates who had dismissed her proposals the day before. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated her presentation display. "Honored representatives," she began, "I'd like to address the concerns raised yesterday about human expansion and military presence in the outer systems." Commander Zexthul didn't even look up from his datapad. "More human lies, I assume?" Lisa felt heat rise in her cheeks but pressed on. "These are documented facts about human colonies. Our settlements focus on agriculture, research, and trade. We've never initiated conflict with any alien species." Hive Queen Veltra's mandibles clicked in what Lisa had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "Never initiated conflict? Your own history shows centuries of warfare among your kind." "That was before we reached the stars," Lisa said quickly. "Humanity has evolved beyond those conflicts. Our space-based civilization is built on cooperation." "Cooperation?" Shard Prime's crystalline voice rang with what sounded like amusement. Your species cannot even cooperate among themselves. We have intercepted thousands of communications showing human disagreements, arguments, and conflicts. Lisa's stomach dropped. Those are normal political discussions in a democracy. Disagreement doesn't mean conflict, doesn't it? Zexthal finally looked up, his reptilian eyes cold and cruel. We have recordings, little mammal. Shall we play them for everyone to hear? Before Lisa could object, audio filled the conference room. Her own voice, recorded during a private conversation with Admiral Brooks weeks earlier, filled the space. The Coalition demands are completely unreasonable. If they think we're going to roll over and surrender our colonies, they're mistaken. The recording continued with Admiral Brooks responding, "If it comes to war, we'll show them what human determination really means." Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. The recording was real, but it was taken completely out of context. They had been discussing worst-case scenarios, not making threats. As you can hear, Zexthul said with satisfaction, humans speak of war even while pretending to seek peace. That's not what we meant, Lisa said desperately. Those were private discussions about contingency planning. Every military considers multiple scenarios. More lies, Ambassador Cretan said, his pale blue face showing disgust. Do you take us for fools, Dr. Carter? Lisa felt the room closing in around her. Everything she said was being twisted, turned into evidence of human duplicity. Please, if you would just listen to the context. We have heard enough context, Shard Prime interrupted. Your species speaks of peace while planning for war. You claim to be evolved while your communications show the same primitive thinking that has plagued your kind for millennia. Hive Queen Veltra leaned forward, her compound eyes reflecting the room's lights like 1,000 tiny mirrors. The Coalition has decided, Dr. Carter. Your species will accept our terms or face the consequences. What consequences? Lisa asked, though she dreaded the answer. Zexthul smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Economic isolation, military containment. If necessary, preemptive strikes against your aggressive colonies. The words hit Lisa like physical blows. Everything she had worked for, everything she believed in was crumbling around her. You can't be serious. You're talking about war against a peaceful species based on misunderstood communications. Peaceful. Zexthul laughed again, the sound harsh and mocking. Your tears prove our point, little mammal. Humans are too emotional, too unstable for true civilization. This pathetic display of weakness shows why your species must be controlled. Lisa felt hot tears running down her cheeks and hated herself for it. She had tried so hard to be professional, to be strong, but the weight of failure was crushing. I'm not weak, she whispered. No. Veltra's clicking grew louder, more mocking. Then why do you leak moisture like a broken pipe? This is what humans call diplomacy. Pathetic liquid expression of failure. Your chemical responses are primitive, Shard Prime added, its voice like breaking glass. Emotional instability masquerading as sincerity. The Coalition was wise to reject human participation in galactic governance. Lisa tried to compose herself, wiping at her eyes, but the tears kept coming. Years of preparation, months of hope, all destroyed in a single morning. Please, she said, her voice breaking. Give us another chance. Let me explain our position more clearly. There is nothing more to explain, Ambassador Cretan said coldly. The Coalition's decision is final. Human expansion will be limited to your current borders. Your military will be reduced by 60%. You will submit to regular inspections to ensure compliance. And if we refuse? Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Then we will impose compliance by force, Zexthul said. The galaxy cannot afford to let a violent, emotional species continue unchecked expansion. Lisa looked around the room at faces that showed no compassion, no willingness to listen, no hope for compromise. These beings had never intended to negotiate. They had brought her here to humiliate her, to justify whatever action they had already decided to take. I need to contact my government, she said quietly. You may send your report, Cretan agreed, but the deadline for compliance is 72 hours. After that, the Coalition fleet will begin enforcement operations. Lisa gathered her materials with shaking hands. The data pads full of carefully prepared arguments felt worthless now. As she walked toward the door, she heard Veltra's clicking laughter behind her, followed by Zexthul's mocking voice. Run along, little mammal. Tell your war leaders that crying will not save them. The corridor outside the conference room seemed endless. Lisa walked as quickly as she could without running, desperate to reach the privacy of her quarters before she completely broke down. Her professional facade was cracking, and she couldn't let the aliens see how deeply their words had cut her. Jake was waiting by the elevator, his face dark with anger. He had been monitoring the negotiations from the security station and had heard everything. "Lisa," he said softly as she approached. That single word broke the last of her control. Lisa collapsed against her brother, sobbing into his chest while he held her tightly. "I failed," she whispered. "I failed everyone." "No," Jake said, his voice deadly quiet. "They failed. They never intended to negotiate in good faith." "They think we're monsters," Lisa cried. "They think humans are violent and primitive and nothing I said mattered." Jake stroked her hair the way he had when they were children and she had nightmares. "Shh, it's okay. We'll figure this out." "How?" "They're going to attack our colonies. People are going to die, and it's my fault because I couldn't convince them." "Lisa, look at me." Jake gently lifted her chin until their eyes met. "This isn't your fault. You did everything right. They're the ones who chose cruelty over compassion." As they rode the elevator to their quarters, Lisa felt something die inside her. The naive belief that all conflicts could be resolved through understanding and goodwill. The galaxy was not the peaceful place she had imagined. It was full of beings who would hurt others for their own advantage, who would mock tears instead of asking why they were shed. That night, while Lisa tried to compose a report for Admiral Brooks and the human government, Jake made his own preparations. He sent coded messages to contacts throughout human space, activated old networks from his military days, and began planning for what he knew was coming. The coalition had made a crucial mistake. They had seen Lisa's tears as weakness. They didn't understand that those tears were precious to people who loved her, that causing them was an act of war more personal and meaningful than any territorial dispute. Jake Morrison had spent years learning to control his protective instincts, to channel his violence into legitimate military targets. But as he watched his sister struggle with the weight of diplomatic failure, he felt those careful controls begin to slip. The aliens thought humans were dangerous when they were trying to be peaceful. They were about to learn what humans became when they stopped trying. Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display in the UHS Liberty's Intelligence Center, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. The screen showed a nightmare. Over 2,000 coalition ships gathering in the Kepler Nebula, just 3 jumps from human space. The fleet included vessels from all 7 coalition species. Their combined firepower enough to glass every human colony in the outer systems. "How long have they been assembling this force?" Admiral Brooks asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Intelligence estimates at least 6 months," replied Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez, Jake's former demolitions expert who now served in fleet intelligence. "They've been planning this since before the diplomatic mission was even announced." Jake felt cold fury settle in his chest like ice. They never intended to negotiate. This whole thing was a setup to justify invasion. Admiral Brooks turned to Lisa, who sat quietly at the back of the room, her eyes red from crying but her jaw set with new determination. "Dr. Carter, in your professional opinion, is there any chance the coalition will honor a negotiated settlement?" Lisa shook her head. "No. They've decided humans are too dangerous to exist as an independent species. Commander Zexthal made it clear that our only options are submission or destruction. Then we prepare for war." Admiral Brooks activated the fleet communication system. All ships, condition read. Begin immediate preparations for combat operations. As the briefing ended, Jake caught up with Lisa in the corridor. "I need to ask you something and I need a straight answer." Lisa stopped and faced him. "What? Are you okay with what's coming? Because once we start down this path, there's no going back." Lisa was quiet for a long moment, staring out a viewport at the stars. When she spoke, her voice was different, harder than Jake had ever heard it. "They called my tears pathetic. They laughed at human emotion like it was a weakness to be mocked." She turned to look at him. "They're about to learn that human emotions run deeper than they imagined." That night, Jake assembled his old special operations team in a secure briefing room. Sam Rodriguez had joined them from intelligence. Ben Collins, their former cyber warfare specialist, had come aboard just hours earlier on a fast courier ship. Amy Stone, the best sniper and infiltration expert Jake had ever worked with, sat quietly sharpening a knife. "Gentlemen, lady," Jake began, We have 72 hours before the Coalition fleet moves against human colonies. Our job is to gather intelligence on their capabilities and intentions. Intelligence gathering? Amy asked, raising an eyebrow. Is that what we're calling it now? Jake smiled grimly. The Admiral has authorized a reconnaissance mission to the Coalition fleet. What we do with the intelligence we gather is up to us. Ben looked up from his portable computer. I've been analyzing their communications. They're confident, Jake, really confident. They think human military technology is decades behind theirs. Are we? Sam asked. In some ways, yes, Jake admitted. They have energy shields we can't match. Faster-than-light communication systems we're still trying to understand. But they've made assumptions about our capabilities based on what they've observed of our civilian operations. Amy finished with her knife and slid it into a sheath on her thigh. They haven't seen our military in action. Exactly. The Coalition species have been at peace for centuries. They've forgotten what real warfare looks like. We haven't. Jake activated a holographic display showing the Coalition fleet formation. Their flagship is a Vorthak dreadnought called the Dominance. That's where Zexthal will be coordinating the attack. Our mission is to infiltrate that ship and gather intelligence on their battle plans. Infiltrate a ship in the middle of a fleet of 2,000? Sam whistled. That's ambitious even for us. The Coalition thinks humans are primitive, Jake said. They won't expect stealth technology they can't detect or weapons they can't defend against. Ben's fingers flew across his keyboard. I've been working on something special. Remember those AI viruses we developed for the Titan Rebellion? I've made some improvements. What kind of improvements? Amy asked. The kind that can turn an enemy fleet's own systems against them. Their ships are more advanced than ours, but they're also more dependent on computer control. Human ships can operate manually if needed. Theirs can't, Jake nodded approvingly. Sam, what's our demolition capability? Sam patted a case beside his chair. Quantum destabilizers. Small enough to hide. Powerful enough to cripple a dreadnought's power core. Plus some surprises I've been working on. Good. Amy, can you get us aboard their flagship undetected? Amy smiled coldly. Jake, you're talking to someone who once infiltrated a pirate stronghold by pretending to be a cleaning droid. Getting onto one ship, even a big one, shouldn't be too hard. As they planned their mission, Jake felt the familiar calm that came before dangerous operations. This was what he was good at, not diplomacy or negotiation, but the application of precise violence against those who threatened the people he cared about. The next morning, Jake found Lisa in the observation lounge staring out at space. She had barely slept, working through the night to compile intelligence reports for Earth Command. Any word from home? Jake asked, sitting beside her. The President is mobilizing the reserve fleets, but it'll take weeks to get them in position. The colonies in the outer systems are mostly on their own. Lisa's voice was tired but steady. The Coalition is broadcasting their demands galaxy-wide. They're calling it humanitarian intervention to protect the galaxy from human aggression. Jake felt his anger spike. Humanitarian intervention? After what they did to you? The irony isn't lost on me. Lisa turned to look at her brother. Jake, I know you're planning something beyond reconnaissance. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. You're planning to hurt them. Really hurt them. Lisa paused. I want you to know that I'm okay with that. Jake studied his sister's face. The naive idealism was gone, replaced by something harder and more realistic. Lisa, they had a chance for peace, Jake, a real chance. All they had to do was listen to try to understand. Instead, they chose cruelty. Lisa's voice carried quiet fury. They made their choice. Now they get to live with the consequences. 12 hours later, Jake's team launched from the UHS Liberty in a stealth ship designed to be invisible to Coalition sensors. The vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering, angular, dark, and equipped with technology that the Coalition couldn't detect because they didn't know it existed. As they approached the Coalition fleet, Jake marveled at the size of it. The ships were beautiful in their way, elegant and graceful compared to the functional brutality of human military vessels. They looked like art rather than weapons of war. There's the Dominance, Amy said, pointing to a massive ship at the center of the formation. The Vorthak dreadnought was over 2 miles long, its hull covered in decorative scales that caught and reflected starlight. Scanning for defensive systems, Ben reported. Interesting. They have energy shields, but they're designed to stop projectiles and energy weapons. Nothing about preventing physical infiltration. They've never dealt with humans before, Jake said. They don't know what we're capable of. Amy guided their ship to the underside of the dreadnought, using the stealth system to mask their approach. There's a maintenance port here. Looks like it's designed for automated systems. Can you get us inside? Give me 5 minutes. As Amy worked to override the port's security, Jake reviewed their mission parameters one final time. Officially, they were gathering intelligence. Unofficially, they were about to introduce the Coalition to the concept of human warfare. The Coalition had made 2 crucial mistakes. First, they had assumed human military technology was primitive. Second, they had made Lisa cry in front of her big brother. Jake Morrison had spent his entire adult life learning to be a civilized man, to channel his protective instincts through legitimate military channels. But civilization was a choice, not a limitation. And the Coalition had just convinced him to make a different choice. The maintenance port opened with a soft hiss. Amy smiled grimly. We're in. Time to show them what humans do to bullies. As they slipped into the enemy ship, Jake felt a cold satisfaction settle over him. The Coalition thought they were dealing with a primitive species driven by emotion. They were right about the emotion part. They just didn't understand what human emotions could accomplish when properly motivated. Commander Zexthul and his fleet were about to get an education in human nature. Class was about to begin. The corridors of the Vorthik Dreadnought Dominance were a study in alien arrogance. The walls were lined with trophies from conquered worlds, and the ceiling was decorated with murals depicting Coalition victories over primitive species. Jake Morrison moved through these halls like a ghost, his team following in perfect silence. Amy Stone had gotten them past 17 security checkpoints using technology the Vorthax had never seen before. Human stealth suits bent light around them, making them effectively invisible to alien eyes. Their weapons were designed to be undetectable by Coalition sensors, and their movements were coordinated by microcommunicators that operated on frequencies the aliens couldn't monitor. Command Center is 2 levels up, Ben Collins whispered into his throat mic as he accessed the ship's computer systems. Jake, their security is a joke. They've never dealt with real cyber warfare. Jake pressed himself against a wall as a patrol of Vorthak warriors passed by, their scales gleaming under the corridor lights. They walked with the confidence of beings who had never faced a real threat, who saw themselves as the apex predators of the galaxy. They were about to learn better. Sam, how many quantum destabilizers do we have? Jake asked quietly. 12, Sam Rodriguez replied from his position near the ship's power core. Enough to cripple this bucket and maybe 50 others if we place them right. Ben, what's the status on your AI viruses? Ready to deploy. Once I'm in their command network, I can spread the virus to every ship in the fleet. Their computers will turn against them in ways they never imagined. Jake smiled grimly. The Coalition had advanced technology, but they had grown soft with centuries of peace. They had no concept of the innovations that came from a species that had spent generations fighting for survival. As they moved deeper into the ship, Jake's earpiece crackled with a transmission from Admiral Brooks aboard the UHS Liberty. All human vessels be advised. Coalition fleet is beginning final preparations for assault on outer colonies. Estimated time to first strike, 18 hours. Jake's jaw clenched. 18 hours. Millions of human civilians were about to face annihilation because the Coalition had decided humanity was too dangerous to exist freely. Children who had never held a weapon, farmers who had never harmed anyone, researchers trying to cure diseases, all targeted for destruction because of alien arrogance. Amy, how close are we to the command center? Jake asked. Next corridor. Jake, there's something you need to see. They reached an intersection where Amy had found a monitoring station. The screen showed live feeds from across the Coalition fleet, and what Jake saw made his blood turn to ice. The aliens weren't just preparing for military strikes. They were celebrating. In ship after ship, Coalition personnel were holding victory parties. They had already divided human territory among themselves, already planned the fate of human populations they intended to relocate or re-educate. On one screen, Jake watched a group of insectoid hive queens clicking in laughter as they discussed converting human agricultural colonies into breeding grounds for their larvae. On another, crystalline shard entities calculated the mineral wealth they would extract from human worlds after the pacification was complete. But it was the main command screen that made Jake's hands curl into fists. Commander Zexthul stood before a holographic display showing human colonies, speaking to his assembled officers. The mammal's pathetic display yesterday confirmed what we always knew. Zexthol's voice carried clearly through the audio feed. They are too emotional, too weak for true civilization. The female's tears were proof of their fundamental instability. The assembled Vorthak officers hissed their equivalent of laughter. One of them spoke up. "Commander, shall we preserve some of them for study? Their emotional responses might be useful for psychological warfare against other species." Zexthol considered this. Perhaps. The crying female showed interesting stress responses. We could learn much about mammalian psychology from proper experimentation. Jake felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. They weren't just planning to attack human colonies. They were talking about experimenting on prisoners, about using human emotional responses as weapons against other species. They had turned Lisa's tears, her genuine sorrow at the failure of peace, into a source of scientific curiosity. "Ben," Jake said quietly, "change of plans. I want every system on every ship in this fleet compromised, not just disabled, turned into weapons against them. That'll take time to implement properly. Then we buy time. Sam, I want those quantum destabilizers placed to cause maximum psychological impact, not just physical damage. Amy, we're going to have a personal conversation with Commander Zexthol." "Jake," Amy said carefully, "that sounds less like reconnaissance and more like assassination. The mission parameters have evolved." As they prepared to move toward the command center, Jake's earpiece crackled again. This time it was Lisa's voice, transmitted from the UHS Liberty to all human forces. "This is Dr. Lisa Carter to all coalition vessels." Her voice was steady but carried an undertone of steel that Jake had never heard before. "I am the human diplomat who attempted to negotiate with your representatives. I am making one final offer of peace." Jake and his team froze as Lisa's words echoed through the alien ship. Around them, coalition personnel stopped what they were doing to listen to the transmission. "Withdraw your fleet from human space," Lisa continued. "Return to your worlds and leave humanity alone. In exchange, we will forget this aggression and continue to seek peaceful coexistence with all galactic civilizations." Jake heard Zexthol's laughter booming through the ship's communication system. Listen to the little mammal, still trying to negotiate from a position of weakness. Perhaps we should preserve this one alive longest. Her emotional displays are quite entertaining. "This offer expires in 1 hour," Lisa concluded. "After that, humanity will defend itself by any means necessary. You have been warned." The transmission ended and Jake heard alien laughter throughout the ship. They found the warning amusing, a final desperate gesture from a species about to be crushed. They didn't understand what they had just heard. Jake did. Lisa wasn't making a diplomatic offer. She was providing legal justification for what came next. When the coalition rejected this final warning, humanity would be officially defending itself against an unprovoked attack. Every action taken after that would be legally justified under both human and galactic law. His sister had just given him permission to do whatever was necessary. "Ben, how long until your viruses are ready?" 20 minutes for basic disruption, 40 for complete system takeover. "Sam, destabilizers are in position. I can detonate them on your command, Amy. Path to the command center is clear. Zexthol is alone except for 2 guards." Jake checked his chronometer. 58 minutes until Lisa's deadline expired. 58 minutes until he could stop pretending this was a reconnaissance mission. As they moved toward the command center, Jake thought about his sister's tears, about the alien laughter that had followed them, about the casual discussion of human experimentation he had just witnessed. The coalition had made their choice when they decided to mock human emotion instead of respecting it. They were about to learn that human tears were precious things, and spilling them came with a price higher than they could imagine. Commander Zexthol was about to get a personal lesson in human nature. The class would be brief, educational, and terminal. Jake Morrison had been a civilized man for 32 years. For the next hour, he was going to be something else entirely. The countdown had begun. The hour expired at exactly 14:32 Galactic Standard Time. Jake Morrison watched the chronometer on his wrist tick over to 14:33 and felt something fundamental shift in his mind. The diplomatic phase was over. The war had begun. "Ben, execute Phase 1. "Viruses deployed," Ben Collins replied from his position in the ship's computer core. "Coalition fleet is about to have a very bad day." Across 2,000 ships, human-designed AI viruses began their work. Navigation systems started providing false readings. Weapons targeting computers began randomly selecting friendly ships as enemies. Life support systems started cycling erratically. Communication arrays began broadcasting random noise on all frequencies. Commander Zexthul was in his command center, still laughing about the human ultimatum when the lights began flickering. "What is happening?" he demanded of his technical officer. "Unknown, Commander. We are experiencing system malfunctions across all departments." Jake stepped out of the shadows at the back of the command center, his stealth suit deactivating. "Allow me to explain." Zexthul spun around, his reptilian eyes widening in shock. "How did you get aboard my ship?" "The same way we got aboard all your ships," Jake said calmly. Amy and Sam materialized beside him, their weapons trained on the Vorthak guards. "You see, Commander, you made a crucial error. You assumed human technology was primitive. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any intrusion." Jake smiled without warmth. "Your sensors are designed to detect technology, you understand. We've had centuries to develop innovations you never imagined." He gestured around the command center where holographic displays were flickering and failing. "Your ships are very advanced, but they're completely dependent on computer control. Our ships can be operated manually if needed. Yours cannot." Zexthul reached for his sidearm, but Amy Stone was faster. Her weapon, a human-designed plasma rifle that was completely invisible to Coalition sensors, was aimed directly at his head. "I wouldn't," she said pleasantly. "We've been very patient up until now." "Ben," Jake said into his communicator. "Status report. 70% of the Coalition fleet is experiencing critical system failures. Their weapons are offline, navigation is compromised, and life support is fluctuating. Should I proceed to Phase 2? "Not yet. I want to have a conversation with the commander first." Jake walked closer to Zexthul, noting how the 8-foot reptilian had to look up to meet his eyes. "Do you remember what you said about my sister yesterday?" "Your sister?" "Dr. Lisa Carter. The crying mammal, as you called her. The one whose tears you found so amusing." Understanding dawned in Zexthul's cold eyes, followed immediately by fear. "You are the security officer." "I'm her big brother," Jake corrected. "And you made her cry." Around them, the command center erupted in chaos as Coalition officers tried desperately to regain control of their systems. Jake ignored them, focusing entirely on the alien commander. "Here's what's going to happen," Jake said conversationally. "In about 30 seconds, Admiral Brooks is going to offer your fleet a chance to surrender. Most of your ships won't be able to respond because their communications are down, but yours still works because I want you to hear what comes next." As if on cue, Admiral Brooks' voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "Coalition fleet, this is Admiral Kate Brooks of the Human Defense Force. Your vessels have been compromised and are helpless. Surrender immediately or face the consequences of your actions." Jake smiled at Zexthul's expression of growing horror. "She's giving you 60 seconds to respond." "I wonder what you'll choose." "This is impossible," Zexthul snarled. "We outnumber your pathetic fleet 10-1. "Numbers don't matter when your ships don't work," Jake said. "But let's talk about something more important. You called my sister's tears pathetic moisture leakage. You laughed at human emotion. You suggested experimenting on human prisoners to study their psychological responses." Zexthul's scales paled. "Those were tactical discussions." "No," Jake said quietly. "Those were the words of a bully who thought he could hurt defenseless people without consequences." "You were wrong." The 60 seconds expired in silence. No Coalition ship responded to Admiral Brooks's surrender demand. "Very well." The Admiral's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. "Human fleet, execute Operation Righteous Anger." Jake watched Zexthul's face as the true scope of human preparation became clear. The small human fleet that had escorted the diplomatic mission suddenly revealed itself to be much larger than anyone had suspected. Cloaked ships decloaked throughout the system. Hidden weapons platforms came online. What had appeared to be a few dozen human vessels revealed itself to be over 800 ships equipped with technology the Coalition had never seen. "Ben, initiate Phase 2, Jake ordered. Across the Coalition fleet, the AI viruses evolved. Weapon systems that had been merely offline now turned against their own ships. Shield generators overloaded and exploded. Navigation computers sent ships careening into each other. What had been an organized military formation became a disaster zone in minutes. Jake watched Zexthul stare in horror at the tactical displays. "Your ships are beautiful," Jake commented. "Very elegant. But they're also fragile when their computer systems turn against them." "This is slaughter," Zexthul whispered. "No," Jake said firmly. "Slaughter is what you plan to do to human colonies. This is justice." The Coalition fleet was dying. Ships exploded as their own weapons fired into critical systems. Others collided as their navigation systems provided false data. The few vessels that remained functional found themselves facing human ships with technology that seemed impossibly advanced. Weapons that fired faster than light. Shields that adapted to incoming fire. Fighters that moved like living things. "How?" Zexthul asked, his voice broken. "How did you develop such capabilities?" Jake thought of Lisa's tears, of the alien laughter that had followed them. "We're not the peaceful species you thought we were, Commander. We chose peace because we wanted it, not because we were incapable of war. You've just reminded us why we got so good at violence in the first place." "Sam," Jake said into his communicator, "detonate the quantum destabilizers." Throughout the Coalition fleet, carefully placed devices activated simultaneously. The explosions weren't designed to destroy ships entirely. They were surgical strikes that crippled propulsion systems and left vessels drifting helplessly in space. "You wanted to study human psychology," Jake said to Zexthul. "Let me give you a lesson. Humans form emotional bonds that transcend logic. When you hurt someone we love, you don't just attack an individual. You attack the entire network of relationships that define us." Jake activated a communicator that broadcast on all Coalition frequencies. "This is Commander Jake Morrison to all surviving Coalition personnel. You attacked my sister's hope for peace. You mocked her tears. You plan to experiment on human prisoners. This is the consequence of those choices." He paused, letting that sink in across 1,000 dying ships. "Any vessel that surrenders immediately will be taken prisoner and treated according to galactic law. Any vessel that continues hostile actions will be destroyed completely. You have 5 minutes to decide." Across the Coalition fleet, surrender signals began blinking to life. Ship after ship transmitted the universal code for unconditional surrender. The mighty armada that had planned to crush humanity was begging for mercy. Jake turned back to Zexthul. "You have a choice, Commander. Surrender now, and you'll live to face trial for attempted genocide. Continue fighting and you'll die here with your ship." Zexthul looked around his ruined command center, at the tactical displays showing the complete destruction of his fleet, at the human soldiers who had appeared from nowhere to defeat the greatest military force in galactic history. "I surrender," he whispered. "Good choice." Jake activated his communicator again. "Amy, secure the command center. Sam, make sure their weapons are permanently disabled. Ben, I want a complete copy of their military databases." As his team carried out their orders, Jake thought about Lisa, about the tears that had started this chain of events. The Coalition had seen those tears as weakness. They had been wrong. Human tears were precious because humans made them so. They represented empathy, hope, and the emotional connections that made life meaningful. Spilling them unnecessarily was an act of aggression against everything humans valued. The Coalition had learned this lesson at a cost of nearly their entire fleet. 3 hours later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the UHS Liberty, watching Coalition survivors being transferred to prison ships. Lisa joined him, her eyes bright with tears again, but these were different tears. "Is it over?" she asked. "The fighting is," Jake said. "The galaxy is going to have to find a new balance of power." Lisa wiped her eyes and smiled. "They thought we were weak because we cried." "They were wrong," Jake said simply. "Tears don't make us weak. They make us human, and humans take care of their own." In the weeks that followed, news of the Battle of Kepler Nebula spread across the galaxy. The species that had dismissed humanity as primitive mammals learned that appearances could be deceiving. The Coalition collapsed as member species scrambled to distance themselves from the failed invasion. New diplomatic overtures came daily, from civilizations that suddenly wanted to understand these emotional, dangerous, surprisingly advanced